Well, the first part of the webinar will be provided by myself. My name is Luca Bucchini, and I am both director at a consulting company called Ilobates and one of the directors of EuroFIR. I worked for a number of years in the area of regulatory consulting, regulatory affairs for food supplements, including plant food supplements. And after me, Jenny Plump from the Quatermain Institute of Bioscience, who has been working on a number of databases, and particularly on the ePlantLIBRA database. And she really knows how the database works, and she will be presenting after me. I would like to add that the ePlantLIBRA database is the result of a past European Commission funded project, PlantLIBRA, and I see with pleasure that some of the participants in this call have had experience of that important project, which I think provide a lot of tools and information and the direction, I would say, if you think of Belfry, of further developments in this area. In terms of my presentation, which will not be very long to allow space for looking directly at the database, I would like to provide you some terminology, some basic terminology, and then I will mention some of the regulations at the EU level where ePlantLIBRA can become useful, and then move on to some national provisions that really have made the need for database even more urgent, and some guidance mainly from EFSA, which is also relevant. And then I will point some information that, again, in terms of regulatory requirements in the database may be relevant, and some suggestions on how to use the database. Well, and then at the very end, after Jenny's presentation, we might briefly discuss future webinars, more specific webinars on this topic. Well, first of all, the term plant food supplement, and before that, the term botanical and botanical preparations. Botanical substances are defined in EU law in terms of all plant parts, plant parts, fragmented or cut plants. And preparations are substances, again, substances produced, processed from plant parts with various methods. And these include also not what we would not call strictly plant, but the focus of ePlantLIBRA is really on plant, and that's also the majority, the most relevant part in terms of the market and safety and regulatory issues. So we know that what botanical preparations are, and we call plant food supplements. This is not a legal definition, but we term plant food supplements those food supplements which have at least one botanical in them. Well, there are many overarching regulations that are relevant for botanicals and plant food supplements. First of all, food business operators need to ensure that food is safe when placed on the market. And this includes botanicals, botanical preparations, and plant food supplements. So the first interest of food businesses in data in ePlantLIBRA is to build an evidence base for safety. And then I would turn to novel foods. Well, as you may know, a food needs to be authorized before putting it on the European market if it has not been used in the EU before May 1997. And sometimes it is necessary to determine whether a botanical preparation is novel or not. And again, often you do need data to do so. When you have food supplement legislation requires you to list botanical preparations among the ingredients and among the substances with a physiological effect. And you need to quantify them. So it is important, for example, to know sometimes to refer to markers. And again, ePlantLIBRA may help. Uh, there are certainly other regulations where ePlantLIBRA may be useful, but I would like to mention health claims. Well, of course, there might be new health claims, um, but at the same time, botanical health claims in the EU are now placed on hold. They are termed pending for complex reasons. But those pending health claims can be used, they can be used, and they are not being evaluated by EFSA at the moment. But food business operators need to be able to show that they comply with the regulations and that they have scientific data to some extent. So again, you may need to prove that you are using the pending claims in an appropriate way. This is very complicated because member states have taken different interpretations of this, but this is becoming more and more important, especially as this pending situation is become more extended in time. And then we have the medicine food borderline. Well, the same botanical preparation may be regarded as a medicine or a food supplement in a different member state. And sometimes compositional information may become very important in reference to existing food plans to make this decision. Well, we also have more specific national legislation. I would mention France's and Italy's. In this case, the authorities have moved forward with providing more detailed guidance on the type of information that you need to have or provide, or the botanical preparation that you're using in your food supplement. We are moving in a way towards GMPs in the food supplement sector as well. And again, you need information and understanding of the botanical preparation that you use in your plant food supplement. And then EFSA has produced over time guidance on how to assess the safety of botanicals in 2009. More recently, it has proposed a qualified presumption of safety approach. And again, data of botanicals and the composition of botanicals is very important. And then if you are working on health claims or defending health claims, compositional data is very important. Well, I mentioned novel foods, and increasingly we are seeing safety assessment of existing botanicals under the so-called Article 8 provision of Regulation 1925, and for example on green tea. And again, you need information on the botanicals. So potential regulatory uses. Well, for example, first characterization of botanicals, you may want to look up in ePlantLIBRA what markers are known for a specific botanical. Well, if the data is in the database, we are not claiming the database is completely universal and encompassing all possible botanicals, but it is a potential source of information on markers on undesirable substances or non-contaminants. So you want to know to find this information because for safety purposes and quality purposes, this is some of the information that you need. And again, for safety more specifically, for example, under French legislation, you would need to have an exposure assessment in place. So you would want to do that for undesirable substances, and you need information on the quantity in a specific botanical. And then again, composition, when you want to exclude the novelty of a specific preparation, you want to compare it with a reference botanical in the literature. And again, ePlantLIBRA may help. And again, I mentioned before the issue of health claims, and you really, for pending health claims, you really need to sometimes, when challenged, this has happened in a number of member states, to provide evidence, for example, on the amounts on the botanical preparation that you are using. And you need some scientific data, even if it is a pending health claim. And again, looking up the evidence on the activity of the compounds, at least at the level of plausibility, may be important. And again, I mentioned before the medicine food borderline in comparison to food, especially in some member states, may become very important. So my suggestion on how to operate in practice is first define your question. Make sure that you know the name of the botanical you're working with. I'm making a recommendation in favor of QS and PNS. I know that other databases are used, but this is probably the most updated. But you should check more of a database to know that you are naming your botanical in the correct way and that you are aware of synonyms so you don't miss the important reference. And then once you have your question, search ePlantLIBRA for information. And I would also advise to look on the compendium. They are not ePlantLIBRA and the EFSA's compendium on botanicals are complementary tools, so you would need to check both. And then as we are working to update ePlantLIBRA, but it's not fully updated, you would need to check when relevant if there are in the literature new data. At this point, you would say, do we have enough information to answer the regulatory question? It has happened, for example, over time that authorities have requested that companies provide data from ePlantLIBRA on a specific preparation. So it might be sufficient. In other cases, you may determine that ePlantLIBRA is providing you information, guide you towards further assessment, but you would need to look into other databases or do a full-blown literature search. And then, of course, the EuroFIR, the team, it will be available for questions and to help you in using the database for these questions. And at this point, I hope that I have given you an overview on the many potential uses of ePlantLIBRA, from adverse effects for safety to beneficial effects for backing up pending claims to compositional data for safety, for quality, for the medicine food borderline, and contaminants and residues for safety, and so on. And at this point, I would, with this introduction, I would leave the virtual floor, to Jenny to introduce you to the actual functioning of the database. Thank you.
The definition of bioactive compounds, we've got many people on the talk today, and so this is the general definition we'll use is inherent non-nutrient constituents in plant foods with putative health promoting and or toxic effects. So we're talking about compounds that may promote optimal health, to reduce risk of chronic disease. And so for plant food supplements, we've got the anthraquinones and the ginkgolides, as well as the flavonoids that are more common in the fruits. So what is ePlantLIBRA? Luca covered it in some detail, but basically we have three main areas of data we include. That's the composition of bioactive compounds in plant food supplements, botanicals, and also food plants. We've got beneficial bioeffects data. Both of those data come from peer-reviewed publications that we quality evaluate and add. And we have adverse effects as well. So these are the three main areas we have, and then we have additional information within it to make it a comprehensive resource, which is the contaminant and residue data from Monica. We had information on synonyms and plant names and pictures, further information on general information on plant food supplements, and additional information. All of that is linked to the bibliographic information. We have all the data included for all the bibliographic data for the data we have. So Luca mentioned that I got a history of working in bioactive databases. So with EuroFIR, we have two databases that are available, and the one that started the whole system off was the eBasis database, which has beneficial and composition data on plant foods. And this is the backbone of the ePlantLIBRA database, so we inherited a lot of the systems. So this eBasis database has been extended through European projects to include more foods. Maybe some meats were added during the Bacchus project, but during the PlantLIBRA project, the whole eBasis database was extended and improved to produce the ePlantLIBRA database, which has not only got the composition and beneficial effects, it was increased to include the adverse effects and contaminants and plant food supplements and botanicals, as well as the fruits and vegetables. So the main functions of the database is that we use experts, trained experts, to add the data, and this data is included using online forms, so it can be done wherever you're sitting in your office, with set specified forms with about 40 fields of information that has to be collected for each bit of data. So we have composition, beneficial data, adverse effects, and then further information on plants and plant food supplements. And then the users of the database, you can use systems to report the information you require based on your interests. So you may be interested in a particular compound and where it may occur, or a particular botanical and what might be in it, or certain bioeffects or certain adverse effects. So the reporting is set up so that you can decide the information you want to retrieve from the database. I've got one slide here on how we compile the database for anyone who's interested in the compilation process, just to show that we have systems and standard operating procedures to make sure that you can be sure of the quality of the data we have included. So that's how we choose the references, it's how we add the data, it's how we check the data, that it's double checked before it's actually included into the database, and the SOPs we have in order to compile a reliable database. What do we have in the database? Well, we have the main compound classes that are in fruits and vegetables and plant food supplements. So here is your classic ones that you know of from the fruits and vegetables, but then we'd also have the anthraquinones and the ginkgolides from the plant food supplements. And when we talk about the biological effects, these are the main 5 areas that we've chosen as the beneficial effects that we've been looking at. So that's cardiovascular health and menopausal symptoms. And the data we have, this little table is where we are right now. So the composition data we have, 42,000 data points covering 271 plants and 40 plant food supplements. That's a generic plant food supplement, so it would include, when it's ginseng, it would be different products. 800 compounds. Adverse effects are covering 25 different plant food supplements. Luca touched on this, the users and the users. There's a lot of users and users of ePlantLIBRA. So here's some examples of why researchers would be using it to support their submissions to research. And then we've got health claim dossiers, new product development, and risk benefit assessments. So it's state of the art. This slide says it's comprehensive, but then what database is ever comprehensive? It's constantly needing to be added to as new data is produced. And as Luca mentioned, it is a valuable resource for information on plant food supplements. This slide has got some contact details. You'll be given this access after the webinar's finished, but Secretariat will be the ones to answer the questions. So now to go to the live presentation of the database. So here we have the homepage for ePlantLIBRA, where all the screens look similar, where you have this left-hand side will stay the same, the center portion is where you work, the right-hand side is all your help text. I hope you can all see this, because as I say, this is a live demonstration and it's not big text. This is how you would see it on your laptop or your screen. So you have the 3 main ways of searching: compositional data, beneficial data, adverse effects, and then the additional information that you could search for too. So here we have, I will do a search from the start for composition for you to see how it works, and then have some that I've already done to save a bit of time, because I do know that with Wi-Fi and timing that sometimes it's a bit slower than others. So I'm going to search for compositional data. I'm coming in as a user who would like, I've heard that St John's wort has some very interesting bioactive compounds in it, but I don't know what they are. And so I'm going to use the database to try and find out what's in St John's wort that might be of interest. And this is what the search page always looks like, where you choose your criteria that you're interested in and then the type of information at the bottom that you'd like to receive. So I'm interested in St John's wort. What you will get is you get pages open that will help you. So I'm coming in, I don't really know completely the name, I don't know the Latin name of it, I've just heard of this compound. So the database has synonyms and it has 16 different languages. So it allows you to find it via synonym, via scientific name, depending on how you know the supplement. So if I put in, I could say I don't even know how to spell it, I could just select here and it will give me the food plants that it thinks that I would know. All these little question marks that appear at any stage will take you to further information. So if I clicked on one of these while the database is working, it would take me to a picture of the plant and a page with information on scientific name and synonyms. And so I'm selecting St John's wort here. I could then select further plants, I could select a group of plants, I could then limit my search to, okay, I've found this particular plant, I'd like to know only the composition of one particular compound in it, or I want to know all the compounds. So in this case, we're starting off with 42,000 data points. When the St John's wort decides to move across, you'll see how much data we have on St John's wort. And then after that, when that's added, we will now decide what data we want to see. As I've mentioned before, there are about 40 fields of information for one data point in the database. So if you had, you could see 42 bits of information, what the plant part is, how it was sampled, how it was analysed. So it should appear. There it is. So here are the output fields that I can suggest. The database is quite clever in the fact that it thinks you already want to see these things. You can delete them and add more. I've decided that maybe I want a little bit more information on the plant. So this is information that's come from the peer-reviewed publication. I can then view the report, and the report that comes out of ePlantLIBRA looks very similar to Excel. In fact, you can directly export it to Excel. This is useful because we do not aggregate the data. We provide you with all the data that as it is available in the publications, because there's such large variety between variation between varieties and growing conditions and country, that it's up to you as a user to decide whether you want the highest level, to make a median, to choose what you do, which is why we have the Excel export. The reference export will give you, not very exciting, but it will give you a list that you can put into EndNote. So you've got your literature search for that particular composition in St John's wort. Everywhere on your report where there is a grey area underlined, that will take you off to further information. So we'll have further information on the plant. This reference number, each reference peer-reviewed publication has a unique reference number. So at any stage you can go and find the source of the data that we've used, and this will open up either as a full reference or abstract, depending on your institution or country access. So that's how you would get the original data. And this unique ID will give you the full information on this row of data that we have. So this data, this compound at this level, I could click here, and this is how the input form, this is all the data that comes. So if you really want to find in exactly where this data comes from, you will find the reference, but also where it was growing, how it was grown, any processing, how it was sampled, and how it was analysed, and at the bottom, how the quality of the data that we've included. So that summarizes how we would do a composition. You can then save the search. If you have this particular report fields that you're interested in, you could save those as default, so you'd never have to keep adding them and taking them away. And you can use a saved search that you could use again at another time. So I could say, I'm now interested, I'd like to see my previous save searched on ginkgo products, and much the same, I've set it up. So I've searched for ginkgo products, I've set the composition reports, and then I can view the Excel-based report based on it. So again, I could add some more fields or just view the report itself. Again, looking like Excel. You can see here why we are adding the data as it comes from the publications. So for a plant food supplement, we've got data in tablet form, in milligrams per litre, in dry weight. So you can see this is why you can't aggregate the data within a database like this. So much the same, the beneficial data would work the same way, where you would search for the supplement you were interested in, the plant you were interested in, or maybe the compound you're interested in, to find the beneficial effects on human intervention studies. And again, you would choose output fields that you were interested in. So in this case, we're interested in what the study subjects, the amount that they were taking, what the how long the treatment was for. So if I use a saved search for here, let's say green tea dietary supplement. So I want to know what the data we have on the beneficial effects of green tea supplement. I could make it a larger search by saying, okay, not only do I want the supplement data, I want green tea as a plant, as a botanical as well. So I can choose myself which I want to see. And the report, again, is an Excel type report, not so interesting to look at on the screen right now, but you'll see that we've got cyclists and healthy male volunteers, and then what supplement they were taking, how much they were taking, and their adverse effects, and their study results. Again, export the references that these data comes from, use Excel. So you can see this is how it's working. We've now got a database that has got the composition data and also the beneficial data combined. That will be very useful, but also to make a risk-benefit assessment, we have data on adverse effects. So here I've got already saved, so I don't have to search around so much, 33 data points on the adverse effects of people eating ginkgo product. I have selected to know further information about how much they had, causality assessment, any conclusions based on this. And again, I can view the report, so it will tell me how much was eaten, what their causality was, the main clinical effects and the outcomes. So we have now the composition, the beneficial effects and the adverse effects within one database. So they're the main three areas of searching for ePlantLIBRA, but we have some additional information that is of use to people who have got different areas of expertise and want to find a little bit more out. So I've mentioned once before about the fact that we have information on the plants. This is where you can find further information. Luca mentioned that the Kew have a very big database. This is just a subset of information. So here, if I clicked for, rather than do a main search, I'll do globe artichoke. It will show here a picture, and then it will have the moniker information on the contaminants and residues that you can save and download to. And this contaminant information is also searchable elsewhere. So the database has different ways of going in depending on how you want to use the database. The final thing that I'd like to show you is that we do have additional information to help the user understand more. So there may be a case where you've come in, you're a botanical expert, but not an expert in composition classes. We have text to give you some background on the compound classes we have included in the database, and it'll give you an example of where they are, the currents, and what may affect the levels, and effects of cooking and effects of processing on them. So we have information there. Again, although we've been talking all the time about peer-reviewed data, we do accept that there's a lot of grey published data out there too. So we have additional books and databases that may be of use, including like the links to the EFSA compendium. Also, these ones, if you've saved in Excel and you go look at your Excel later and you think, actually, this row of data is really interesting, I want to know more about it, you don't have to go back into the database and do a complete search. You can actually just put in the unique ID of the row of data you have, and it will open the input form and allow you to get the reference and find further information about that particular row of data, so you don't have to redo your search every time. The same as each unique reference ID you could find again. And if you wanted to double check to make sure that we had information from a particular author or a particular publication, you could search the database to see if that data was already in the database. So I think that probably covers the entirety of the database.
Okay, so thank you, Jenny. I just wanted to, before we leave thank you, Jenny. It was very interesting. I am always impressed by the amount of information and the quality of the data in the database. Before we leave some time for questions, I just wanted to bring up the possibility of having further webinars, more detailed ones with examples on using the database and addressing specific questions and issues that you may have. So now it's time for questions, and I please do not hesitate to write up your questions. Now there is a question now I'm reading from Marine. I'm wondering how, she's asking, I'm wondering how the database is updated. Is data entry always an ongoing process, or is it made only when funds are obtained for projects? Well, let me give you an initial answer, and then I will leave Jenny to answer provide more details. Yes, indeed, the effort to do massive updating requires further funding, and of course, depending on the availability of funds on further projects, we will, I think, engage on large efforts for updating. There is a possibility, but I think Jenny has mentioned somehow. I think that we are also accepting some quality submissions because we understand that there are many there is data in the industry, for example, which has not been made available, and we have looked really into making that data available as well. So there is a possibility to contribute data as well. Jenny, do you want to add anything to this?
Yes, I think I agree what you say. We are always looking to add new data. Large additions do require large amounts of funding, but we are working, especially with the sister database eBasis, with people who have particular areas of interest where they feel that we're lacking some data, and they can provide us to put the data in, or be of use to know that they can add the data for us, and we can train those people up and give them the system so that that data can be added swiftly. So we have means of working together to add data on particular compounds or botanicals as they arrive. So we're always open for people who would volunteer to give their time to add new data.
Thank you. And there is a second question from Klaus Riediger. And will the database be updated regularly? In part, we have replied, but I think that we are seeing increasing membership of specifically of ePlantLIBRA, and so I think that during this year we will check whether that it makes possible to update some sections of the database. And of course, we continue to look for volunteers and new data and new sources of projects. Any more questions? So another question. Does the database provide details of the legal status regarding authorized claims? I, I, I think no, I wouldn't say so. Jenny, I don't
No,
think
I
with your
wouldn't say
question.
that. I wouldn't say that this was a resource that would be able to keep up to date with
Yeah.
authorized health claims. No.
Yeah. So the process, as you probably know, with pending health claims on botanicals, it is rather difficult to check. I mean, there are informal databases available. The proper way to do it is to go on the Commission's website, look for the specific number of the pending health claim, and then check in the EFSA. It's access database. It's available on the EFSA website. Check the corresponding number, and then you would know that that claim is pending. And as I mentioned, you may be asked in some member states to provide some evidence for the claim. And in that case, you would ePlantLIBRA would help with information which to support the claim in this transitional situation. And of course, when looking at the new claims potentially, then you would find information on interesting or potentially interesting ones for future research in the database. So there is another question from Marine. How are data of potential interest identified through bibliographic search? How to do for gray literature? Jenny, I guess that's for you.
Well, during the PlantLIBRA project, there was a whole group of people who prioritized the top 100 botanicals and plant food supplements of interest. So that was given a hierarchy, and that's what we worked through for the project. And it may well be that's why something that made 101 on the list may not be in ePlantLIBRA right now. So they were prioritized based on the adverse effects and the beneficial effects to make sure that we were choosing ones that actually were being consumed. There was, within the project, there was a lot of work also done on what countries and what plant food supplements were being taken around Europe. So we were able to focus on the ones that we knew people were consuming. And then the bibliographic search was for the scientific information for the composition and the biological effects. However, the adverse effects data was also coming from poison centres and other sources as well, because a lot of that data is not published through scientific data. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay. If there are no more immediate questions, I would thank everyone, Jenny and the whole EuroFIR team and all participants. If you have further questions, you just need to email ePlantLIBRA and ask questions on the webinar. Propose for further webinars, for example, as I mentioned, with concrete examples, or anything that you may need, especially after having access to the database. Jenny, did you want to add anything else?
No. If anybody's particularly interested in what is in the database, they can come directly to me, because I'll be able to source that faster. So that you're welcome to drop me an email too.
Again, thank you everyone, and talk to you some other time about ePlantLIBRA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.